Greetings, friends and fellow freelancers. Welcome to another episode of Tabletop Mercenary. This week, I wanted to address something that a lot of us fall prey to in the TTRPG creator space, but it is not just us who deal with this. This is also an issue that I have seen in the publishing industry in general. This is a problem that authors of all stripes have, and it is very silly, and it can really help you trip over your own feet if you don't address it, because a lot of the time, we need help from others in the community. We need ideas. We need walls to bounce things off of. We need people to tell us when we're being silly. And a lot of the time we prevent ourselves by doing this. And that is, generally speaking, too many of us seem to think that ideas, just by existing, just by being put into words, are inherently valuable. And they're not. Ideas, as Alice Liddell, who inspired this particular video, linked to her video below, she was talking about this recently on Alice the Author, ideas are inherently worthless. You can just spout them out all day, you can trip over them wherever you're going. Ideas are just words in the wind. They are not worth money. I'll give you a perfectly sound example of this. A little while ago, in one of my previous videos, I talked about someone putting together a TTRPG that heavily involved time travel. Just a random idea out there of the idea that you and your players and your party could just skip throughout time doing whatever it is you were there to do. You could go to the far future, you could go to the distant past. That idea by itself, not worth anything. I put it out there in the video explicitly as a seed to plant for later, because so many people seem to think that just saying, I want to make a game about, I don't know, let's say sentient cats who are solving mysteries behind the scenes, for those who have read my hard-boiled cat novels. Just saying that, just putting that out there, they're worried that that's somehow a risk to them. Much the same way that someone's saying, I want to write a far future sci-fi novel that's a space opera but is also the Trojan War. Just telling people that's your idea, that doesn't put you at any risk. That is not an inherently valuable commodity. You haven't done anything with it yet. The game, the book, the comic, the movie, whatever it is, doesn't exist. And I point that out because too often we confuse something that is work with something that is just conceptualizing. If you're just conceptualizing, if you're just tossing out ideas, you haven't done anything that's worth something yet. You can't publish an idea. You can't publish a concept. You have to write it down. You have to create a supplement. You have to make a world guide. You have to write a novel. Whatever it is, you have to make it be a book. You have to make it a physical item, or a digital item in some cases. But it has to be something people can see, people can look at, people can touch, people can hear, whatever it is. It has to be more than just some random electrical impulses in your brain bacon. And this is where a lot of us get confused, because I will be the first to tell you, if you have several chapters of a book written out, if you have an entire table of mechanics, if you have write-ups of NPCs, those are something. Those are not just an idea. They may not be a finished product. They may not be a complete guide to something. They may not be a novel that's ready for public consumption. But those are things. Those exist. You made something. And you should definitely be very careful who you hand completed work, even if it's just loose sketches, even if it's just a completed piece of art, even if it's just a couple of tables. Those could be stolen. Those could have value. But there is a huge difference, even just between initial notes or initial sketches or first drafts of something and just an idea you had in your head. If all you are at is the idea phase, then there's nothing to steal. You can put that idea out there, and someone could see it and think, that's a really cool idea. I'm going to do something with it. And if they then go and develop a game off the exact same premise of a game you want to develop, you are going to wind up with two very different games. They may have some broad stroke similarities. For instance, if you, say, wanted to set a sci-fi game in that far future Trojan War I mentioned, that will be the same premise of both games. But you're going to have very, very different means of execution. For example, when you had this idea, you might have been thinking of a very techno-mythological way of doing things. You may have just human super soldiers who have been genetically enhanced and become these very strange examples of post-human creation. Someone else who hears that idea may take that exact same premise, but they make a mech-based game, so everything is very technological. There's a lot of giant robots and transforming, troop transports, and there's these massive ships just having these huge battles over just far-flung space. You're going to get two very different feels from those games, even if they started with the same premise. So, if you're having that moment where you think you've got a good idea, or you have something you want to kick to the community, and you're worried someone might, quote-unquote, steal your idea, ask yourself if it's more than just an idea. Have you done any actual work on it yet? Do you have something to steal? Or is it just a concept? In much the same way, someone could steal your house if you handed them the necessary paperwork and said, hey, does this look right? They could then take that. If you had an established business and you gave someone all the licenses and whatnot to it, and they said, hey, is this a good business idea? And you've already done all the work, they could just swipe that out from under you. But if you just said to someone, hey, I'm thinking about opening a comic book shop, they could just decide, that's a good idea, I'm going to do that. They haven't stolen your idea. They just heard something and thought, I'm going to do that. In much the same way that if you said, I'm going to go jogging every day at 6 o'clock in the morning, if someone else hears you say that and said, that's a good idea, I'm going to do it too. Them getting in shape off your idea doesn't mean that they stole your fitness. So keep that in mind. We need community. We need people to bounce our ideas off of. We need people to help us shape things, to tell us when our ideas are actually kind of dumb, or to point out when someone has already done something very similar to what we're trying to do. And we are not going to be able to access those resources. We're not going to be able to really make the connections we need with other designers, even just players, other beta testers, people like that, if we're constantly terrified and we keep all of our ideas so close to the vest that no one actually knows what we're working on until it's done. That is a very lonely way to pursue this particular profession, but it also leads to a lot of paranoia. Things are not that serious, guys. We make games, and a lot of games are very similar to each other. And even if someone does take inspiration from a quote we had or a cool idea that we put forth, that doesn't stop us from making our version of that game. So unless you have something that is partially completed or which is work that can be stolen and built off of, just relax. It's perfectly fine. Share your ideas. Talk to people. Figure out who you want to work with. See who it is that vibes with you. You need to be able to go out confidently while at the same time not giving away everything for free. So before you get onto, I don't want someone to steal this idea, I don't want someone to take this concept, ask yourself how much work they would have to do to make the game themselves. If the answer is all of the work, because all you've done is come up with a basic concept, they haven't stolen anything. Only when you have done some of that work for them, and they could swipe it from you, is that stealing. So, that's all for this week's installment. If you have any questions or things you'd like to see me cover in the future, just let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoy my new banner, which I recently picked up thanks to an Amazon gift card, you'll definitely be able to find me at cons with it. I'm planning on taking it with me on my travels. I sadly did not have it for the Chicago Steampunk Expo. But till next time, this is your Tabletop Mercenary, signing off. First and foremost, thank you for staying to the end of this episode of Tabletop Mercenary. If there's a question you have about being an RPG creator, please don't hesitate to put it in the comments below so I can address it in a future episode. If you want to help me keep the lights on and keep this show going, then please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and giving it a share on your own social media pages to help boost the signal. Lastly, if you really enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a tip by buying me a Ko-fi or becoming a Patreon patron at the links in the video description below. You'll find me on both sites under the name The Literary Mercenary.